Most backpackers trust the price tag more than their own judgment. $80 feels like a gamble. $800 feels like safety. That instinct is exactly how people end up soaked, cold, or carrying gear that quietly failed before they ever noticed. Today we expose where the cheap setup fails in real rain and cold and reveal the gear worth every penny. One of the worst failures comes from a premium brand you almost certainly trust. By the end, you will know which pieces in your pack are doing their job and which are one storm from leaving you stuck. I'm Ranger Jack. 17 years outfitting backcountry clients through alpine and winter wilderness terrain. No brand deals, no free gear. What's in my logbook tells you more than any marketing page ever will. Number 1, the rain shell. Buyers trust the $80 shell because the tag says waterproof in bold letters at the register, and that's all most people ever check. Buyers trust the $800 shell because the name on the chest is the one everyone recognizes from the gear shop wall, the one that's been in every outdoor magazine for 20 years running. Here's the problem with both of them. The cheap shell's coating breaks down fast under sustained rain, and the seams are rarely fully taped. They're sealed where it's cheap to seal, not where the rain actually hits when wind drives it sideways. That means it holds for 20 minutes of light drizzle and wets out the moment the storm gets serious. You feel it first at the shoulders, exactly where the pack straps press the fabric flat against your skin, and water finds the weak point in the stitching. The premium shell has a different problem, and it's one buyers almost never expect to find in something this expensive. Some of these jackets are overbuilt for conditions most people will never actually face. Stiff, aggressive membranes engineered to block rain so completely that they also block your own sweat from escaping. That means you stay dry on the outside and soaked on the inside, and 3 hours into a climb, those two things feel exactly the same against your skin, maybe worse, because you trusted the price to protect you. For a short rainy walk to the car, the $80 shell is genuinely fine. For real multi-day exposure, neither one is doing what you think it's doing, and that's the part nobody puts on the product page. The price tag tells you the membrane name. It doesn't tell you if it's taped right, and it definitely doesn't tell you if it actually breathes under load. And here's the price logic nobody walks you through at the register. At $80, you should expect exactly this kind of compromise because the materials budget simply doesn't stretch to full seam coverage and a premium membrane at the same time. That's not a scandal. That's arithmetic. At $800, there is no excuse for a jacket that traps your own body heat against you. You are not paying for fabric at that price. You are paying for engineering that should already account for real exertion in real conditions. And when it doesn't, that's the gap that should make you angry. Pack fabric is where the next surprise hides, because a waterproof shell does not mean a waterproof pack. Number 2, the pack itself. The budget pack uses untreated nylon and a frame that's really just a stiffened back panel with a marketing name stitched onto it. Under real load, 3 days of food, a stove, a sleeping system, water for the next stretch of trail. The straps stretch, the fabric wicks water straight into your gear, and by hour 3, your shoulders already know something is wrong, even if your brain hasn't caught up to it yet. The premium pack swings the other direction, and I've watched this happen firsthand, outfitting clients who showed up over-prepared. Frames built for week-long expeditions, sold to people heading out for 2 nights on a maintained trail. More hardware, more adjustment points, more places for something to snap, bend, or jam, exactly when you need the pack, to just work without thinking about it. A frame built for a 7-day trip doesn't help you on a weekend loop. You're carrying someone else's trip on your back at a premium price, and you're paying for capability you will genuinely never use. The next item is the one that decides whether you stay warm or end up hypothermic. To be fair to both sides, here's the narrow use case that's actually true. If you're a heavier hiker, or you're carrying gear for a partner who can't carry their own share, that bigger premium frame earns its keep. It's not a bad pack. It's a pack built for a job most weekend trips simply don't have, Match the frame to the trip, not the trip to the frame, and you'll save yourself real money and real shoulder pain. Number 3, the insulation layer. And this is the one I know personally because my logbook has a full page dedicated to it. Years back, I outfitted a client into real alpine cold with a budget-insulated sleeping setup that looked perfectly adequate at the trailhead. It looked fine, zipped up in the parking lot, fine in the gear shop under fluorescent lights. It failed once the temperature actually dropped at altitude in the dark, with real consequences sitting right there in front of all of us on that trip. Synthetic fill in that price range loses loft fast once it picks up even a little moisture from condensation, breath, or a damp tent wall pressing against the bag overnight, and the bag that felt warm in the store simply stops performing exactly when it matters most. The premium down bag has its own trap, and it's a quieter one that takes longer to show itself. Down rated for dry cold can fail badly the moment it gets wet. Untreated down with no DWR coating, no vapor barrier, built entirely on the assumption that the trip stays dry from the trailhead to the car at the end. Alpine terrain does not make that promise to anyone, ever, no matter what the hang tag says. Temperature rating means nothing if the fill can't survive how wet your actual trip turns out to be, and that's a lesson I genuinely don't need to relearn twice. This is where a trusted premium logo starts doing the heavy lifting for a fit that's wrong for your terrain, and the buyer pays full price to find that out the hard way. That trip stuck with me enough that I still think about it on the Whitcomb Group's winter route every season, where the margin for a bad insulation call gets thinner the higher you climb. Number 4, buy the pack rain cover, or more often, the lack of one entirely. The cheap cover looks like real insurance, a thin sheet of coated nylon that cinches over the top of your pack and feels like a smart $5 addition. But the gaps show up exactly where the straps attach to the frame, and water finds that seam every single time it rains hard enough to actually matter. The premium setup often skips a liner entirely, betting the whole system on the shelf fabric's waterproof claim alone, as if one layer of confidence is the same as 2 layers of protection. That's brand overconfidence dressed up as minimalist design, and it costs buyers exactly when they assumed they were covered. A waterproof pack and a waterproof cover are 2 completely different promises. Most buyers walk out of the store thinking they bought both when they only actually got one. The fix is rarely expensive. A proper liner bag inside the pack costs almost nothing and solves what neither the shelf fabric nor the cheap cover ever fully will. But almost nobody buys it because nobody tells them they need it until the gear is already wet. This next one is the trap people defend the hardest right up until the moment they see what's actually inside the boot. Number 5, footwear. The budget boot has weak ankle support, traction that disappears the moment wet rock gets involved, and a sole that starts breaking down under real pack weight faster than most buyers expect from something marketed and photographed as a hiking boot. The premium backpacking boot isn't a scam. It's frequently just the wrong tool for the job in front of it. Stiff, overbuilt for terrain the actual trip doesn't require, and poorly broken in before the trip even starts, which is exactly how blisters end an otherwise good hike by mile 6, no matter how much the boot cost or how good the leather looks in the photos. The $800 boot isn't wrong as a product. It's wrong for this trip, and that distinction is the one buyers almost never make before they hand over the card. The final trap is the one most buyers will defend the longest, right up until you put the price tag next to the actual published specifications. I've got both versions of this boot in my gear graveyard, sitting on the same shelf for the same reason, bought for the wrong trip. That shelf doesn't care what either pair cost. It only cares where each one failed. Number 6, and this is the biggest reveal in the whole video, because it's the one buyers trust without ever thinking to question it. A flagship outdoor brand, respected and genuinely earned for its 3-season ultralight performance, puts out a 4-season shell or insulation piece that borrows the same name, the same colorway, the same marketing language as the line that built its reputation in the first place, but not the same cold and wet engineering underneath the fabric. The brand earned trust somewhere else. It earned it making gear for dry summer trails and mild shoulder season weekends, not alpine storms at altitude, with real exposure and real consequences on the line. Buyers assume that trust transfers automatically because the logo looks identical on both products sitting next to each other on the shelf. Same stitching, same font. It doesn't transfer. The construction underneath does not carry over just because the tag matches. That's the failure point that costs people the most because they never even think to question it. They trust the name right up until conditions get real, miles from the trailhead, with no easy way back and no signal to call anyone for help. The logo earned trust somewhere else. It didn't earn it here. And that's exactly why this is the one I warn every single client about before any of the others on this list. This is the most expensive lesson on this entire list because the price tag actively works against the buyer. A $400 piece that fails outdoors is a bad purchase. A $400 piece from a brand you trusted enough to skip the research entirely is a dangerous one because the price itself talked you out of asking the one question that mattered. Does this specific product, not this brand, actually belong in these conditions? That's what to avoid. Now here are the products that actually justify the money, the ones I genuinely tell a client to buy with their own cash. The first pick is a budget shell, yes, still in that same $70 to $90 range, that earns its place because it publishes its actual face fabric, fully tapes its seams from collar to hem with no shortcuts, and doesn't pretend to be something it isn't on the hang tag. It's not trying to survive a week buried inside a storm system. It's built honestly for what it actually is. The construction matches the claim printed on it, and that kind of honesty is worth more to me than a louder logo on a jacket that's quietly lying about what's underneath the coating. The second pick is a mid-tier insulation piece using a treated DWR-coated fill or a proven synthetic blend matched to real moisture exposure, not a dry lab temperature rating pulled from a controlled chamber that has nothing to do with your actual trip. This is the kind of bag that keeps performing on night 2 when conditions actually shift, and the tent walls start sweating around you because the materials were chosen for the terrain you're genuinely in, not for the headline number printed on the stuff sack. It sits in that middle price range precisely because the brand spent the money where it counts, the fill treatment and the baffle construction, instead of on the name printed across the chest. The third pick is a premium piece, and I'll be completely straight with you about this one. It's genuinely on my own gear list, the one I outfit clients with on real alpine and winter trips where failure isn't an option. Verifiable specifications, named materials, a build that's actually engineered for cold and wet conditions instead of borrowing trust from a different, easier product line in the same catalog. I don't get this for free. Nobody sends it to me, and nobody ever has. I bought it because 17 years of logbook entries back it up, and that independence is the only reason you should trust a single word I'm telling you right now. When a client asks me what to buy before a real winter trip, this is the piece I point to without hesitating, and I'd say the same thing whether you were paying me or not. None of this is about cheap being bad or expensive being good. It never was, and it never will be. It's about whether the construction actually matches the conditions you're walking into, and whether the brand is honest enough to tell you the difference up front, before you've already paid for it. Every item on this list, cheap or expensive, failed for the exact same root reason. The buyer trusted a signal that had nothing to do with actual performance, a price, a logo, a photo with a mountain in the background. None of those things have ever kept anyone dry or warm. Before you spend money on rain or cold weather gear again, run this fast checklist. On a shell, check whether the brand actually names the face fabric and how far the seam tape really goes. Not just the word waterproof printed somewhere on a tag, the real coverage end to end, seam by seam. On a pack, match the frame and load support to your actual trip length, not your ambitions for some future trip you haven't planned or booked yet. On insulation, look past the temperature rating entirely and ask whether the fill is treated for moisture and whether that rating reflects a realistic trip or a lab chamber that has never once seen real weather. On footwear, Match the ankle support and stiffness to the terrain you're actually hiking this season, not the terrain in the catalog photo with the dramatic mountain in the background. And across every single piece of gear you're considering buying, ask one more question. Does the spec sheet name real materials and real numbers, or does it just say rugged, all-weather, and trail-ready, and leave it there with nothing behind it? Vague language is the first warning sign every single time, with no exceptions worth making. Outdoor conditions don't care about brand logos. They never have, and they never will. They care whether the gear performs when the weather turns, and nobody is there to bail you out at 2 a.m, miles from anywhere. That's the only review that's ever mattered out there, and it's the only one that doesn't lie to you for a sale. So tell me what's actually in your pack right now, today. What brand, how many trips or miles you put on it, and what failed the first time conditions got real on you out there. Tell me what you regret buying, and tell me what category you want put through this exact same test next. I've got the logbook open right now, sitting beside me. Let's see where your gear actually sits.